TIFU accidentally typed MILF instead of MIF repeatedly in an email to a customer and got fired. I used to be a contractor and one of the companies where I briefly, for reasons below, worked in 2017 wrote software to help manufacturing companies track product shipments, orders, and overall manage processes. The software had about 1,000 different features and companies could customize it by picking what they needed. We reworked a few of the features into a new module named the Material Identification Facility. It's a database system for raw materials, but with tons more functionality. Customers had been asking for these improvements for a while, so we did lots of demos as it got closer to release. In an email to one of our customers, I repeatedly typoed the feature name. I was stuff along the lines of, "You'll be happy with what MILF has to offer," and, "MILF has all your needs covered." I don't remember the exact email, but I made the mistake several times. The email was CC'd to at least a dozen people between our two companies, targeting all the important decision makers. My mistake did not go unnoticed. Several people commented and one lady complained quite loudly, saying along other things that maybe we should rename the feature. I was off the contract by the end of the day. I still say whoever came up with that name knew what they were doing. TLDR referred to a software feature as MILF instead of MIF when talking to client and got fired for it. Pro tip: remove certain words from your word processor's dictionary. As a local government guy, I use the word public a lot and pubic never. So it's worth having the dictionary flag it for me if I use pubic in a document. If I actually need to use the word, I can always ignore the squiggly red line. Reminds me of my bio class when the teacher had to constantly remind the class how to spell organism and make sure to proofread. I wrote consultant to a client once instead of consultant. You made a typo and get fired? Question mark. That's crazy! Exclamation mark. If you got fired for just the typos, that really would not be fair. I would wager there were other reasons and they just used this to fire you. I wrote whorehouse instead of warehouse once. Everybody laughed and laughed. Matt ID. Change the name. Sorry for laughing, but I can see why. Right after Material Identification Facility, you wrote database system for raw materials. But sorry for you. Had a teacher's presentation with thrombocytopenia instead of thrombocytopenia. Legendary moment for our class. I worked with a guy several years ago, long before the pandemic pandemonium, who would now and then work from home. He'd send an email intending to say he was WFH that day, but they always came out as, "I am WTF today." That's sad. Well, easier to fire you and let clients know they took care of the problem instead of just letting you know to be more careful when typing. So I once worked for a Fortune 50 company who shall remain unnamed even though the product will give it away most likely. We had a firmware update utility and a tool to update that firmware called the Independent Firmware Update Utility. Of course that means it was the IFU. We also had a firmware product that started with the letter A and communicated by SOAP. Our internal tool was less than toolname SoapSender. Or ASS. This led to things like, can the ASS turn the platform on? Or what happens if you shove this in the ASS? We absolutely knew what we were doing when we named that tool. On the Is a Hot Dog a Sandwich podcast a couple years ago, Josh was trying to say mass spectrometer, but instead said speculum. And when he corrected himself, made the comment, "It's like when you mean kabuki." and say the other thing instead. Avoid kind regards as a closure to emails as well. Having been a contractor, I think the main reason you might have been fired is the person, presumably the client, suggesting a name change. More work on their end without more pay possibly, depending on the contract. Also, you typoed twice, which makes it seem less accidental to them. Maybe. I'm really sorry about that. I used to work for a software company that was building a system called ENMS when I gently pointed out that the only way to pronounce it was enemas. I just got a blank look. TLAs or PETA. I worked in blood banking for about a decade. I frequently had to send emails regarding donor platelet WBC counts. It only took one missed "oh" in a subject line, thankfully sent only to my very chill manager, for me to triple check every single instance of count every time. For a decade or more I've been charting mesial incisal facial lingual fillings as MILFs. No worries, you go tit next time, bro.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.